All right, want to welcome everybody to this particular webinar because I think this is going to be one of the ones that I know I've been looking forward to for a long, long time. Today we're going to talk about how to build your business and ultimately sell it as an Amazon seller, because if you've gone through my course and you've read the section there about being able to sell your business, you know, we kind of start out at the end and work backwards. There's a large element involved here of seeing this industry mature and seeing people sell their businesses for large amounts of money. I know I get emails, seems like on a regular basis, of somebody who has reached a certain plateau in their business and they want to be able to cash out, or either somebody who's starting to do a tremendous amount of volume and they just want to be able to buy and acquire existing Amazon businesses. So it's something that I think it's a very timely topic and something that I wanted to be able to discuss. And to be able to do that, I want to bring in the people from Empire Flippers. And there's somebody I came across, and they are really the preeminent business brokers, if you will, of people who are in the Amazon business. They buy, sell, and trade, if you will, Amazon businesses, all different types of other e-commerce type of things. But they seem to be putting a tremendous effort on FBA businesses, like I guess we all are. And what little bit I followed them before I contacted them, they look like they know what they're doing. They look like they've got things well organized, and that's the type of group that I like to deal with. So we've got a few of their folks here to talk to us this evening. So I'm going to introduce Justin, I'm going to introduce Mike, and I don't know, and I think Joe is with us too, and I don't know how much he's going to be able to chat, but we've got three of their guys who are going to come in and tell us a little bit about just the general overview of helping get your business ready to sell, what your business might be worth, and just some general good information that whether you're thinking about buying and selling now or not, this will be something that will be helpful for you to have going forward, and one day I think you'll need it. So with that said, welcome very much to all of you from Empire Flippers. And guys, if you just want to come in and introduce yourselves, I think that might be helpful, and then we'll get started talking about all the information.
Thanks, Mark, so much for having us on. My name is Justin Cook. I'm one of the partners at Empire Flippers. I'm also here with Mike Frankovich, who is our marketplace manager and knows quite a bit about FBA businesses, is an investor in another FBA business, which he can talk about a little later. So he's got quite a bit of business experience there. We actually started, this is a really new industry for us in terms of selling FBA businesses, because the industry is so new itself. We had our first FBA, Amazon FBA listing, I think in December of 2015, and so far this year we've sold more than a dozen FBA businesses for several $1 million. So we've done quite a bit of FBA business in 2016. I see that continuing in 2017. Mike, you want to say something about yourself?
Sure. Mark, thank you so much for having us on. I'm excited about this webinar. It should be packed with lots of useful information, and exactly like you said, even if you're not looking to sell right away, there should be some good information in here to either help you prepare to sell at some point in the future, or even just to help you grow your business.
Okay, all right. Thank you, Mike. Joe, you want to jump in, or are you going to hang in the background, or?
Yeah, thanks a lot, Mark. I appreciate you. Hi, everybody. This is Joe Magnotti, the CEO of Empire Flippers. I'm here in kind of a loud room, so I'm going to remain quiet, let Justin and Mike lead the way. But for those of you who wind up buying or selling with us in the future, we'll definitely be speaking.
Okay. Well, it looks like we're getting things switched over on the slides and that type of thing. But one of the things, guys, I think is kind of interesting. For those of you on this webinar, you know that for us doing evening webinars, we don't do very much simply because we have so many people from Europe and Australia, and somewhere around 2 o'clock Eastern time seems to be the best time to fit everything in. But guys, tell us the Asian connection here and kind of why we're doing this at 8 o'clock at night.
Yeah, so this is kind of a weird deal. I know the timing is a little off. Part of that is because myself and Mike and Joe, we're all out in Asia. So we run what's called a distributed team, where our management team can really live, work, or travel anywhere. Most of us tend to spend most of our time in Southeast Asia, but we've also been in South America, and a couple of our guys were in Europe this year. The reason for that is because as long as we have an internet connection, we can really run our business anywhere, and we don't have a set office that anyone needs to be in. We work out of coffee shops, and we rent offices temporarily, and that sort of thing. So we get together every 3 or 4 times a year for about a month, and we'll normally do it in like an exotic location like Phuket, Thailand, or Chiang Mai, or Saigon, and work together for the month. But we have a kind of definitely a different style of doing business. Now, in terms of doing business, we have a U.S. LLC. Most of us on the management team are Americans. It's a U.S. business. We just happen to live and work abroad.
Well, the whole foundation, all of us got in this business to have the laptop lifestyle. And, I appreciate the fact that you've been able to accomplish that. So I think that's a little bit of good inspiration for everybody here as well. And, the thing about it, you sell your business for enough money, come to think of it, you can live about anywhere you want now, can't you?
Yeah, that's absolutely true. And if you're making enough money with your business, especially if it's not something that requires like set hours from you, you can sit on the beach in Bali. The internet's not great there, but you can sit on the beach in Bali for a couple of days and then go back to your, villa or your apartment and do a little bit of work and then kind of get back to the beach. So that's, I think, one of the benefits of, and there's a whole bunch of people that live and work out here. We talk about it on our podcast, and we have other connections out here that are with a bunch of people that are entrepreneurs that are doing the same thing.
Yeah, it's funny. When I came back from the Canton Fair, the last one here in October, I have a place at the beach, or Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, and I spent like 3 weeks there. And I'm sitting here thinking it really doesn't matter where I am. Still got paid with Amazon stuff and whatever else. But again, that's just the nice stuff and the fun side benefits of that. But again, we got to do a little bit of work, I guess, to get to that point. So, guys, tell us about, just share your knowledge with us about, as you say, the exit strategy and what to do and how to prep your business.
Thanks, Mark. We'll go ahead and start like the main kind of like presentation of the slides. And if anyone has any questions, they can hold them to the end. We are happy to answer any questions you have. So we do want to get into the nuts and bolts of this and your questions at the end. So talking the exit strategy, first I should introduce ourselves. My name's Justin Cook. I'm the Chief Marketing Officer at Empire Flippers. We've got our nice, funky, goofy pictures here. And then Mike, as we mentioned before, is our Marketplace Manager. He's on the call as well, and we'll get into some of the FBA specifics. To talk about Empire Flippers briefly, what we do is we help others buy, sell, and invest in online businesses, and those are FBA businesses, but also just traditional e-commerce businesses, drop shipping businesses, content-based AdSense and Amazon affiliate type businesses, even info products and course material. So we do that as well. We're on track to do about $10 million in 2016. And in 2016, we've sold a total of 14 FBA businesses, anywhere from $50,000 on the low end up to a $1.5 million FBA business on the high end. So, and as I mentioned, this is our first year of selling FBA businesses, and we came out of the gates pretty strong, which is over a dozen FBA sales. Let's talk about what you plan to learn in this webinar. Number one question is, how are FBA businesses valued? I think that's a really important one to start with, so you have an idea kind of where you're sitting today. Question number two, how to maximize the value of your FBA business. And then question number three, the process for selling an FBA business. And we're gonna go back and forth between me and Mike as we go through some of these slides. So the first thing is, let's talk valuation. So there's a formula you can use for valuations. It's really straightforward. We're gonna cover it in some depth, but it's monthly net profit times a multiple plus your inventory at cost. Can you still see my screen, Mark?
Yes, it's got at the top. It's got valuations of FBA business.
Great. Okay. Yep. So valuation equals. Say again, Mike.
Yep. We can still see your screen, and we're on the question one slide.
Great. So yeah. So monthly net profit times multiple plus inventory at cost, and we're going to go over what each of those mean. To start with, let's talk about monthly net profit. So in your business, ideally, what we're looking at is a 12-month average of your monthly net profit. So that's a trailing 12 months. Over the last 12 months, on average, how much monthly profit did you make? So if over the course of a year you made $120,000 in profit, we would say on average it was $10,000 a month. Now that could be 1 month $6,000 and 1 month is $18,000. It accounts for seasonality, a lot of things. And there's a lot of reasons we use a 12-month average, right, Mike?
Correct. And basically the main reason is we want to factor out any seasonality, any pickup during Christmas or the holidays. What this 12-month average should be, it should be a representation of what a buyer should expect to make going forward if he buys the business.
Yeah, so they're looking for some kind of like standard metric or baseline numbers, right? And the best thing to do is to look over the last 12 months. In some longer-term businesses, like offline businesses, they'll look over the last 3 years and things like that. But internet businesses, in particular FBA businesses, are so new that if you look any longer than that, and a lot of times the business either wasn't around or doesn't have a great track record, or what you were doing 24 months ago isn't relevant to where you're at today. So the next question we get is like, well, sometimes I've seen on your marketplace or I can see a reason to use a shorter average, like a 3-month or a 6-month average. When would you use that? So we would generally use a 3 or 6 month average and under a couple of scenarios. So if the business is growing really quickly, right, it's not terribly seasonal, but it's growing really, really fast, and the last 6 months are more representative than the previous 6 months. We may use a 6-month average. We may do the same thing for 3 months, just depending on kind of like, you know, where it's working out. We'll also do the same thing if the business is like heavily declining. So the business we're making, let's say, you know, $20,000 a month, you know, 12 months ago, but it's gone down to like 5 or 6 because of whatever changes. Then, you know, $20,000 a month isn't relevant anymore. So we use a much shorter 3 to 6 month average. And that just depends. That's kind of business to business, but it makes sense when you actually look at the graph and you look at the numbers. So the other thing is, how do we determine profit? You know, we look at things like add backs, unnecessary expenses, owner salary. Why don't you talk about that for a bit, Mike?
Sure. So when we look at net profit, it's basically the amount of money that the business would generate, and for expenses, we use everything that's needed to generate that net profit. So some specific examples. If you pay yourself a salary, that would get added back into the net profit. If you have any unnecessary expenses or any tax-related expenses, those are added back into the profit. So, you know, so a great example is if you take a trip to Bali, you sit on the beach, and maybe you talk a little bit about business, that can be added back in. If you do a trip to China to meet with your supplier, that needs to be included as an expense.
Yeah, that's a good point, Joe. Like, if it's marginally a benefit to your business, like the trip to Bali, I mean, you're talking some business, you're having some mastermind or something, that's fine, but we all kind of know what that's all about. If you're specifically spending money on something that needs to be done, and the next owner is going to need to do that as well, then that's going to continue and remain as an expense. So monthly net profit includes your salary, like owner salary is included in monthly net profit, and any expenses that aren't required to keep the business running. All right, so the next question is, you get monthly net profit, which is a major driver towards valuation. The other one is multiple. We get a lot of questions about that. What would my multiple range be? Well, this ranges pretty widely. So it can be anything from 20 times to 40 times and up. So that's 20 times to 40 times your monthly net profit. Now, you know, I can hear you guys, you're wondering what's the next question. Why would it be 20 versus 40? And you probably want to be at the higher end of that. How do I get to 40? Well, you can get to the 40x and up by having a longer track record. So if you've got 3 years of business, you've tracked all your information really well, and you've got a nice history of increasing and improving your profit month over month and year over year, that's fantastic. If we're using a 12-month average versus a 3 to 6 month average, that's way better because it accounts for things like seasonality. It gives like a better stable base to a potential buyer, and a potential buyer's mind, they're much more interested in a 12-month average generally. And you get a larger multiple for simply having a bigger business. A $100,000 FBA business is just in general going to have a lower multiple than a $1.2 million Amazon FBA business. All right, Mike, why don't you talk about what leads to a smaller multiple with FBA businesses?
Sure. We'll go through some specific examples shortly and give you guys data from actual sales that we've done. But the stuff that leads to a smaller multiple is pretty much the inverse of what Justin has already talked about. So if you have a shorter track record, for example, a business that's been around for 1 year instead of 2 will have a smaller multiple. If we use a shorter than 12-month average, you'll get a smaller multiple. Or if it's a smaller business, a business making $10,000 a month, it would typically have a smaller multiple than one making $50,000 a month.
All right, so the last thing we want to talk about is inventory at cost. So we've got the monthly net profit times the multiple. Those are the main drivers for the value of the site. Let's talk about inventory. Inventory at cost, what we mean by that is landed cost. So your cost of shipping, the actual cost of the product, everything it costs for you to get it into Amazon's warehouse. So that's the actual cost. We're also talking about, you're not going to be able to make a profit. So if you've overstocked on inventory, you're not going to be selling this at retail value. That's not going to be added at retail to your valuation. It's basically wholesaler inventory at cost. We also don't want you to have a ton of additional inventory. So if you're getting close to a sale, you can't stock up on inventory and try to double the value of your business by just having a ton of inventory. Buyers aren't that interested in that. So a reasonable amount, it would be 5 to 20% of your sales price to have that in inventory, that's generally considered reasonable. If 50% of your valuation is coming from inventory, that's unreasonable. One thing you want to do is you want to make sure that you have enough inventory being passed over that the new buyer can take over the business without too much hassle. So that's one of the reasons we have 5%. Any less than that, and you might be cutting a little close and making it a little difficult for a potential buyer. The last thing I'll mention in terms of inventory is that you can't have any dead inventory. So if you had a product that was crushing it 2 years ago but isn't selling anymore, well, we're not going to be able to add that value into your valuation because this is not a product that's selling anymore. So anything that you've kind of been sitting on or you have all this extra inventory for, you're hoping to kind of get, have someone buy it from you, that's not likely to happen. Sometimes it can be kind of negotiated in, but for the most part, it's just not likely because it doesn't actually benefit the buyer. It's a loss you took, and you have to basically eat the inventory.
Yeah, and just to briefly add one more thing, if you do have, let's say you do have more than 20% of inventory, if you can justify a good reason for having that inventory, let's say you happen to sell your business in November and you've stocked up for the holidays, that would be reasonable. You just have to prove that the inventory is not dead, and you have to keep in mind that the buyer might want to negotiate some kind of terms on that inventory. So there might be some delayed payment on part of that inventory, or you have to be open to, different types of offers to make a deal work.
All right, so we've covered the valuation formula. I hope you guys got that. If you didn't, we're going to have a link you can go to later where you can review it a little further and actually get an automated valuation on your business. So just hang on for that. Before we do that, though, we want to quit with the kind of like theoretical and the formulas. Let's get into the details on actual businesses we've sold this year. We've got 2 examples. Mike, why don't you run through these for us?
Sure. So both examples are from sales in the last 3 months. The first example we'll go through now, it was a product in the beauty niche. We sold this one for a 22x multiple. It sold for $500,000. The monthly net profit was just a bit under $23,000 per month. It was 1 year old, and when we priced it, we used the 5-month average for the net profit. The business only had one product that it was selling. It was a single SKU. All the sales were coming from Amazon US. However, the seller had 5 new SKUs ready to launch, and by that I mean he received samples, he had a launch strategy, and it was ready to go, and it's something that the buyer could simply take over.
All right, Mike, so let's look at this. This is a 22x multiple, and we said it was a range of like 20 to 40 plus, right? So this is definitely on the lower end. It had a $500,000 sales price, $23,000 monthly profit, but the business was only 12 months old. So it hadn't been around that long. It was started exactly 12 months ago, which, by the way, if you're ever wondering if there's real value in building FBA businesses, think about this. Business was started, and inside of 12 months later, it sold for $500,000. So that's not too bad.
Let me just interject here because I'm just going off the seats here. I'm big on strategy and concept, guys, and why you do something, and of course, work backwards. But, this is an actual example. So, if they averaged 20, they roughly made $250,000 in profit in that 12 months and then threw in the 500 at the end. They made $750,000 in a year. I don't know about anybody who that's not a lot of money to, I'd like to meet.
Yeah, right. Well, consider the first 7 months it didn't make much money. I don't know exactly the details on the first 7 months, but the 5-month average.
Pick a number.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay.
Sure.
Well, it's only 650. It's not important anymore. But as all of you listening, I want you to think for a second of a strategy. You start a business, and we all know that the skill you have and the knowledge of being able to do it, that's really the skill here. To where, what if you had a strategy where you're going to build up and sell at the end of 12 months? You started another brand. You did this 2 or 3 times. You're set for life, and your kids are set for life. This is important stuff. This is how you make money. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interject.
A lot of times
this is the stuff of why we get into business, and a lot of people get glossed over of, well, I got to make $2,000, and they concentrate on the $2,000 a month when this is how you make decisions to be able to have unlimited funds.
You're absolutely right, and yeah, I think one of the points you made is like, this is when you get it here, like some people maybe listening to this webinar are thinking, God, if I had a business making $23,000 a month of profit, there's no way I would sell. I'd keep it, and they're thinking that because possibly they think, oh, well, this is my golden goose, right? Like, I've got my golden goose. It's pumping out cash. I would never sell the golden goose. Well, what they realize is that once they've kind of mastered the steps in your course in terms of how to build an FBA business and how to scale it, that's their golden goose, is the skill sets, right? Not the actual business. These are assets. These are the eggs that come out of the golden goose that you can then sell to other people.
Well, I'm the perfect case study of this too, because my first business I did 10 years and I sold it at 35 and I retired and I got bored, and then I built up and sold 5 other businesses over the next 10 years because I knew how to build it up and get it to a selling point and then sell it. So, you know, for my 30s and 40s, this is what I did. And now it's so much easier with this Amazon FBA stuff that this is, I don't know, I can't articulate how excited I am about the possibilities of this, because this is, I was talking about this stuff 2 years ago and maybe I was a little bit ahead of the curve, but I'm just telling you folks, this is something you have to include in what you're doing. Your decisions have to be based on this, because what if it takes you 2 years to get to this? That's okay. You know, it doesn't matter. Yeah. But the fact is, you've got a lot of money waiting for you at the back end if you do things right along the way. And it's a wonderful strategy to be able to do this. And I suspect they're going to show you some other ways to make it even more valuable in these next few slides.
Yeah, Mark. Yeah, Mark, I'd say 2 to 3 years is more likely. I think this is a unique case on the kind of like the sped up spectrum. This is less typical. 2 to 3 years, though, is pretty common.
Sure.
So like using a 12-month average on a 2 to 3-year-old FBA business on a sale is more common, and will actually get you a better multiple, as we're going to show in our next example. So Mike, let's look at example number 2. Why don't you walk us through this one?
Sure. So this one is very recent as well. This one was a FBA business in the outdoor sports niche. It sold for a 30x multiple. The sales price was just around $1.5 million. It was making right around 50 grand a month. It was just a bit over 2 years old. And in the valuation, we used the 12-month average. The business had about 20 SKUs. One important thing to note here, the SKUs were all in related categories. So it was not necessarily the exact same products, but they were all targeting the same general buyer. However, they were ranking for different types of keywords. The business sold products on Amazon US, UK, and Germany, and those sales were roughly equally distributed. So if you guys compare the 2 examples that we gave you, so this one went for a significantly higher multiple, almost 50% higher, and some of the reasons should be obvious. For example, net profit on this one was significantly higher, 22 grand compared to 50 grand. The business was twice as old. Instead of 1 year, it was 2 years old. We were able to use a 12-month average instead of a 5-month average, and I would say the 2 most important things: it had multiple products, 1 SKU versus 20 SKUs, and then just as importantly, it had multiple sales channels. Even though all the sales in this business were still on Amazon, they were split between Amazon, US, UK, and Germany. And these last 2 points, that helps minimize risk for the buyer, and it's something that we're going to get into a little bit later as well. Justin, do you want to add anything here?
Yeah, Mike. So one of the things I want to point out is the difference between a 22 and a 30x multiple. So let's talk about that a little bit more. The difference is a $400,000 difference, and this is assuming everything else is the same profit, same everything. And so here's how this business is different than the previous example. We're talking about 13 months older on the business, right? So just basically waiting 13 months, and in that 13 months, you get a larger average. Just wait for the average to kind of steady out, and we're able to get a 12-month average. You add some additional SKUs, and you expand outside of just Amazon US. That's really it. So just doing those things, waiting 13 more months, adding more SKUs, and then adding Amazon UK and Germany, changed their valuation from a $1.1 million valuation to a $1.5 million valuation, a $400,000 difference. So that's pretty significant. And again, Mark, you're talking about businesses and being able to build them up just outside of 2 years, and this business was built up to a $1.5 million valuation. Not too shabby.
Yeah, and the multiples you're using now, if anybody is curious, I mean, basically 30 times is basically 2.5 times annual earnings. So it's another way to look at it, because that's always, when I did things, it was always a 2-year minimum because it was brick and mortar, and obviously some things a little bit different, I think, with digital things. But yeah, I mean, this is the reason I get excited about doing businesses, and the reason I think everybody should. And seeing these numbers, if this doesn't open up your eyes, then something's wrong with it.
Yeah, investors get excited with these multiples too. I mean, you figure a 24x multiple. So let's say you sold your business at a 24x multiple. An investor gets interested in that because they're thinking, wow, that's a 50% return annually, right? In 2 years, I get my money back. That's amazing. So, and it's a business I can run anywhere. I don't have to. It's not like I'm buying a gas station or a laundromat where I have to go in every day.
Sure.
Like I have to be in Albuquerque and stay there. Like I can be on the beach in Bali. It's a significant difference. So I don't want to oversell it.
Yeah,
like,
that's a very valuable point because typically you had to also go in and do a job and be there. This is something to where, quite frankly, I'm surprised the multiples are not higher, and I think they will be in time. But
yeah, I think they will. I think they will when you get leverage involved. So there aren't a ton of lending options yet, but that's changing. And I think when that happens, we're going to get larger multiples, and just as the industry continues to mature.
Because I know I would a whole lot rather pay this 30x multiple for a business like this than for the local dry cleaners. You know,
exactly, for sure.
You know.
All right, so let's move into the second question, which is great. Hopefully you understand valuations. If not, you can go back and get the slides, and we're going to give all these slides to all the attendees, and we'll give you a link where you can get all the slides. But the second question is how to maximize the value of your FBA business. So let's say you have an FBA business right now, and you're thinking, that's fantastic, that's all well and good, but I want to sell in 6 months or 12 months. How the heck do I make more money with my business? How do I make it worth more? So we're going to cover a bunch of different things. We're going to talk about whether you should have a separate company or somewhat the same company. We're going to talk about the detailed financials you need to keep. The work required. We're going to talk about how to minimize buyer risk as a seller perspective and why you need to think about that. We're also going to talk about what it means to not touch inventory and why that's a buying advantage, why people are interested in that. And then we'll talk about the people and process you need in place in your business to sell it for a great multiple. So let's start with the separate company. Mike, why don't you take this piece?
Sure, and then just one other general piece of feedback. If you're watching this and you're thinking to yourself, I'll never sell my FBA business, I'm going to hold this forever for the cash flows, some of the advice that we give you in here about maximizing the value will actually help you grow your business because it will let you focus less on the day-to-day operations and more on growing the business. So the first
Mike, that's also a good
having,
point too. And I mean, from somebody who has sold so many businesses, I had repeatedly the question, why did you sell them when you're making money? Well, for me, it was a game. But however, sometimes it's funny. You wake up one day and why do you go buy a new car? You just want to. You know, why do you? Maybe you got to put your kids through college. Maybe you want a second home. Maybe you want to retire. Maybe you want to travel. I mean, people have thousands of reasons for selling businesses. And those of us in this business know the proof people who just sold that $1.5 million business. If they want, they can just start again and get to that pretty quickly, you know?
Well, Mark, what's interesting, like there are other things, like personal reasons. Like, you know, we had a couple that wanted to adopt, and adoption is expensive. So they sold theirs a smaller one, like a 5-figure business, so they could afford the money to adopt. A lot of people want to buy their first home, and they don't want to go into debt to do that, so they sell their online business to buy their first home. We had a couple do that. Sometimes it's even nefarious, right?
Divorce.
And they're thinking from the seller's perspective, and not even nefarious, but like they get up to a certain level and they say, there's no way this business will ever make more money. It is at the peak, the creme de la creme. It's not going to get any better than this. This is the maximum I'll be able to sell this business for. And they're like, I get my $200,000, I'm cashing out. So they sell it. And then what happens is the buyer looks at the business and says, these guys are donkeys. They don't know how to do paid traffic at all. They missed this, this, and this. And honestly, a $200,000 business is kind of my minimum that I'm willing to buy it. Until if it doesn't hit that level, I'm not even interested in looking at it. So they buy it, and inside of 2 years, they're able to double or triple the business because they have other skill sets and other ways of looking at the business. So the seller's like, no way, I'm pulling one over on these buyers because it's totally maxed out. And the buyer's like, yeah, this seller's know what he's doing. I'll take it over and increase the business.
And there are just unlimited reasons. Anything from the other side of things is maybe somebody gets divorced. Maybe it's things like that. But things happen in people's lives where they want to change. You know, whatever it is, if someone's to buy or sell, there's things available. You know.
The sad stuff, I always bring that up, and Joe's like, no, dude, be a little more positive. Talk about, you know, the weddings that are coming up, not the deaths.
Well, like, yeah, I agree, but that's reality. And, you know, but.
Yeah, for sure. All right, Mike, you want to continue?
Sure. So if you're setting up this business, one of the things that we'd like to see in an ideal case scenario is you want to have a separate company. So the business that you're selling should be owned by one corporate entity. It should be either an LLC, a corporation, or some kind of other corporate structure. This is important because it makes the sale a lot cleaner. It makes it a little bit more attractive to buyers. Even though all the sales that we've done and all the sales that we do are asset sales, so we typically do not do stock sales, still having that separate corporate structure makes things a lot easier. This last point is even more important. You want to have a separate business bank account where all the money flows in and out for this specific business. This allows buyers to do in-depth due diligence, review all your numbers, and it puts everything in one nice and organized place.
Mike, you want to touch on asset sale and why that would be important for not assuming liabilities and maybe that area?
Well, it's confusing when you have multiple businesses.
Why you buy the asset versus a corporation.
Yeah, well, when you have different, a bunch of different product lines that are adding, or different businesses that are funneling money into a business account, it's very difficult for a buyer to sort and sift through that. So if they're struggling to be able to sort one business from the other, they may just move on to another listing, right? So there are other businesses that are available for sale, and if they get tired of trying to like sort yours out, they may just go somewhere else. So that's one of the reasons why it's nice to have good, clean financials with a separate business bank account that they can go through.
Well, with the asset sale, too, what I was thinking, I ran into this issue at one point with one of my businesses, is that somebody was asking the question. I had no legal issues whatsoever, but I think he had some previous businesses of his, and he was just so concerned there was going to be some legal thing from the past hitting, where if he bought the assets, he basically was protected against any previous legal issues. You know?
Correct.
Yeah, you're not buying up their liabilities.
Right.
Correct. And when you do an asset sale, exactly, you're not inheriting the liabilities. If there's any legal issues or lawsuits for something that happened in the past, you're not inheriting that risk. There's also some tax implications around an asset sale versus stock sale. But honestly, on most businesses in this range, an asset sale simply makes more sense. It's more simple to execute. It's more logical.
All right, so let's talk detailed financials. Mike, why don't you talk a little bit about the financials we look for in an FBA business specifically?
Sure. So what we'd like to see is two types of financial statements, and we'll get into some accounting here. So don't fall asleep. This is very important. So we'll need to see some type of income statement and a cash flow statement. So the income shows how much money your business makes every month. This is used for valuation purposes. This is what we use to price your site. And the cash flow statement, shows a potential buyer how much money is coming in and out of the business. Oftentimes, depending on your inventory setup, the numbers in these two statements could be significantly different. We also like you to track all this stuff in an accounting software. Initially, when people get started with a new FBA businesses, they'll be tracking everything in Excel, or sometimes even the shoebox with the receipts. As your business grows and gets bigger, what you want to do is you want to hire a bookkeeper or an accountant and have them put everything in this software. Two of the most popular softwares are QuickBooks or Xero. There's lots of third-party tools that will work with those software packages, and they'll API into Amazon, and you'll have everything in one organized place.
Well, one of the things too, we had Greg Mercher from Jungle Scout, but also Fetcher on last week, and I would suspect that would work with this as well.
Correct. Yeah, I haven't taken a close look at it, but I talked to him a little bit about Fetcher, and it looks like a great tool.
It's much more simplistic than QuickBooks, and for the vast majority of Amazon users, obviously, I believe the simpler the better. I use QuickBooks for years, and it can do very complex things, but it's a lot to learn too. Where the Fetcher is just lock and load.
Yep, and honestly, it depends on the complexity of your business too. Let's say you have a 10 grand a month FBA business that you're looking to sell. You probably don't need to do Xero. If you have a $1.5 million business, sure, you probably do need dedicated accounting software.
Sure.
So one last piece that I want to hit on here is the cost of goods sold. So this is a common question that we get from sellers. How do you determine the cost of goods sold in the income statement, in the valuation that we do? And for this, we basically use accrual basis. So what that means is we take the number of units that you've sold for that month, and we multiply that by the landed cost. So let's say we're trying to come up with your cost of goods sold for January. You've ordered 1,000 units that month, but you received 1,000 units that month, but you've only sold 200. Your landed cost, your COGS would be 200 multiplied by the landed cost. Does that make sense, Mark?
Yeah, Mike. So that's
The
kind of the
expenses
bean.
a month that occurred. You know.
Yeah, that's kind of the bean counter answer. Like just to give a more simple answer, I think, is if, let's say in the last month of your 12 months, you just ordered a ton of inventory, that's not going to count against you necessarily. Right. It's only going to count against you what of that inventory you sold in that month.
Right.
Correct.
All right, so let's talk about the work required. In general, when you're, one of the ways to really improve valuation is to improve your monthly net profit. Right, so one of the ways you can do that to improve valuation is to cut your expenses. But what you don't want to do is you don't want to add work. So you don't want to cut, let's say, all your customer service staff and then find yourself in a position where you're providing all the customer service yourself. So a good example, like a strong, solid business, will have customer service questions handled by virtual assistants, whether that's people in the Philippines or part-time staff that you have. Maybe they use templates and they use FAQs. A bad example would be moving third-party fulfillment in-house, like let's say into your garage. Talk a little bit why that's the case, Mike.
Yes, so oftentimes sellers will have the misconception right prior to the sale, I'm going to cut all the expenses I can because they'll give me a higher monthly net profit, so I'll be able to sell the business for more. However, you have to take the multiple into account as well. You know, if your business is easier to run, you'll generally have a higher multiple. And we're going to talk about some of the things in the next slides here, what makes your business easier to run. So it's a trade-off between maximizing monthly net profit and getting a higher multiple. The main thing to keep in mind is don't add additional work for yourself in order to cut expenses.
Yeah, to get the highest multiple, you also want to have a business that's sellable at all, right? So if you move a third-party fulfillment into your garage, right, a buyer may not be able to do that. Either they don't have a garage that works, or they just don't want to put that in their garage. They don't want that additional work. So that lowers or limits your buyer pool. So the more you limit your buyer pool, the less likely you are to sell, which means the less likely it may take longer to sell the business. You have to find just the right person. It might not sell as quickly. Might not sell at all. So whatever you can do to increase your buyer pool is better. So if you have it in third-party fulfillment, you have a much higher buying pool because anyone can run that from anywhere. It makes it a lot easier. All right, so let's talk about minimizing buyer risk. Now, as a seller, this is important because, again, buyer pool, right? You want to keep your buyer pool as high as possible, and you want to limit what buyers may view as risk. So single points of failure is a big one. You want to drop your seller hat or drop your entrepreneur hat for a moment and put on the buyer's hat, so put on the due diligence hat, and think about this. Like, if a business has a single point of failure, that's a bigger risk. And one of those single points, a big one with Amazon FBA, is Amazon, right? So let's say that the Amazon account is the huge risk, right? So if Amazon shut down your account, shut down the seller's account, this business goes away, right? So there's really, that's a challenging one to really diversify against, but there are other ones too. So when you're looking to buy, the Amazon piece is a big one. You're looking at that. Compared to other businesses. You're also thinking about how many SKUs there are. Is there just one SKU? Are we limited there? I mean, how many suppliers are there? Is it one supplier offering a sweetheart deal, or are there multiple suppliers? So if that supplier goes out of business or raises my rates, can I switch easily and quickly to another supplier? Are there multiple traffic or sales channels? Is all the traffic coming from Amazon? Have they added other traffic channels? Do they have any paid traffic or paid customer options? What does that look like? The more channels you have, the more diversified and less risky your business looks to a potential buyer. One of the easy ones is, like, a lot of times people have just one supplier because they were lazy or just didn't want to shop for another supplier. They did early and they kind of gave up on it. When you're looking to sell your business, have a second or third supplier option, especially for your most valuable SKUs, so you can say, look, here's their pricing, here's their contact information, they're on the ready to supply for us if needed. I haven't needed it, but they're there if we need them. And it gets rid of one of the other single points of failure. What do you have to say about buyer risks, Mike?
Yeah, and I would say one thing to keep in mind is for each one of these points that we discussed, there's pretty much a spectrum of risks. So if you're talking about SKUs, multiple SKUs are always better than one SKU. However, multiple SKUs that are simply color or size variations don't reduce that risk as much. Now, if you have similar products that are still ranking for similar keywords, that's better than the previous example. However, if you have different products, all ranking for different keywords, that's even less risk. You know, same concept applies to suppliers. If you have you know, contact information for suppliers that you know can make the same product, that's good. Even better would be if you've received samples from those suppliers and you've tested the quality yourself and you know those are viable options. And even best case scenario would be you've done an order or two with this new supplier, you have a proven track record that you can demonstrate to a buyer that says, look, I've ordered from these guys, you know, the production time is as expected, the quality is as expected. If anything happens to my primary supplier, these guys are a viable option.
Yeah, so bottom line here, you know, you can't diversify away from Amazon because Amazon's a core to your business here. But you can diversify within Amazon, which means multiple SKUs, different traffic channels, and then having multiple suppliers as well. Let's talk a little bit about no touching your inventory. And Mike, this is a big one for you. I know you've dealt with a lot of buyers that are looking for this. They don't want to be all over handling all the goods, right?
Yeah, and this really goes back to the point that we made a couple slides ago about maximizing your potential pool of buyers. So, you know, one of the ways you can do this, avoid touching inventory at all costs. So, you know, what some new FBA sellers do is they'll have the inventory shipped directly to their house from China, and then they'll do some quality control. They might do some packaging and then ship it off to the Amazon distribution centers. That's a really bad example. That's something that you definitely
that's fine starting off, right? Like when you're just starting off, Mike, that's completely fine. It's not okay when you're getting toward the end piece of your business.
Absolutely, and you know, and the reason for that is if you're looking at it from a potential buyer's perspective, like Justin said earlier with the garage example, a lot of buyers would simply not be willing to do that. You know, they could be living in a different location, they might not have the space, or they might simply not have the time or interest in doing that. So, you know, one easy way to fix this is to use a third-party service in addition to Amazon. You know, one service that we've heard highly recommended from our buyers and sellers is FBAinspection.com. There's a bunch of other similar services out there, but basically these third-party services can do a lot of the stuff for you. They can apply the F and SKU labels. They can do an additional quality control check. Like oftentimes sellers will do one in China and they'd like to do another one in the US. They can do that for you. They can even receive your removal orders from Amazon, and they, you know, they can help you with those types of things that involve you to touch inventory. Oftentimes sellers will look at it as, let's go with the removal orders example. Let's say you remove inventory, you know, once every couple months from Amazon. You don't have that many units. It's not really that big of a deal, and you just ship it to your house. Well, using a third-party service for something like that will make your business a lot stronger, you know, from the perspective of the buyer.
Yep. All right, Mike, I'm going to speed this up because I want to make sure we get some questions at the end.
Absolutely.
Some people have some questions about this. Let's talk the last bit here is people and process. If you have documented process, you have a larger buyer pool. And again, we keep coming back to that, but I think it's really important. And what I mean by documented process is there are things you do on a daily basis or a weekly basis or a monthly basis that you're going to need to pass over to the buyer. And so if you have those documented either in Google Docs or in just PDFs, we use a service called suiteprocess.com, which is great for kind of like documenting out your SOPs or your standard operating procedures. But if you have those documented and like step 1 through step 12, here's how you do this, it's a lot easier to pass over to a buyer and have them take over the business. You're going to have to do it anyway. So if you already have those in place, a buyer is going to get that warm and fuzzy and be like, look, okay, I trust I'm going to be able to take over and manage this business because the seller has been very thorough and detailed in documenting how they do it. It also helps when you have trained people. Now, this may decrease net profit as you grow and scale your business. I mean, you have to spend some money on people to work in your business, but it definitely improves your multiple, right? Because your buyers are much more interested in taking a business that is more hands-off and run by a team. Also, having a team just provides for more flexibility and room for growth. I may hire or I may buy a business because I like the staff, I like the people that are working on that, and I see use for them in other aspects of my other businesses. So I want to scale. I already like the staff on this business. I'll add other websites and stuff to the business and have that team take it over. So it's actually kind of a acqui-hire where I'm bringing on the team as well. All right, Mike, so I think that covers what we can do to increase the multiple or the value of an FBA business. Let's talk about the process for actually selling an FBA business. And this includes the initial valuation, the question all sellers or entrepreneurs have to ask themselves, do I sell now or do I sell later? We'll talk about the documentation they need, a vetting process, negotiating the deal with a potential buyer, and then the business transfer and payout as well. So the initial valuation, we talked about kind of valuation formula. If you want the cheap and easy version of that, you can go to empireflippers.com/mark. Click on the valuation tool, and it'll give you a very rough estimate for FBA businesses, and it'll give you more email and content around preparing for the sale. So if you liked kind of like the idea of like, what do I need to do 6 months out or 12 months out or 3 months out, well, you'll get some emails about that. But this will give you, it'll take that valuation formula we gave you earlier and just automates it for you and gives you a nice range on what your business is worth. All right, the question you need to ask yourself when you're looking to potentially sell your business is, do I sell now or do I sell later? How comfortable are you with the initial valuation? Sometimes, and I'm guilty of this too, is that you look at your business and you go, I put so much sweat, blood, and tears in this business. There's no way it's only worth $250,000. Like, it's got to be worth over $1 million, right? And so sometimes you're like, you resist a little bit. You think your business is different. The potential in your business is so much bigger and so much better that it can't be worth just that. So unfortunately, in our business, we have to be the bearer of bad news sometimes. Now, everyone likes to watch Shark Tank, and they think, oh my God, I'm going to get these crazy valuations from an investor's perspective. And for most people, for the rest of us that have real businesses that are making real money, this is how it's done. Anything under 10 million for sure, this is how it's done. Now, if we're talking Twitter or Facebook, their valuations are a little different. I can't speak to those. That's outside of the scope. But anything under 10 million, and for most of us, these are the types of valuations you're going to get. This is how it works. And what you need to do is you need to weigh the time and effort it's going to take to make changes to you actually doing it, right? So if I make these changes now, and I start seeing the value in my profit over the next 3 to 6 months, and then I sell at that point, is it worth it to me? Like, is the cash in hand now better invested into a new business or whatever I need to do, or is it worth me putting the time in to make those changes? And the 2 examples we gave earlier, that 12-month difference was a $400,000 difference in the business. Depending on where you're at, that may be significant, right? It may be totally worth it to do the extra 12 months. No guarantees, but it was probably worth it. If it's an additional $20,000, probably not worth it. There's probably better things I can spend my money and time on than trying to maximize that business.
And this is definitely a personal question that you have to answer for yourself. There's no there's no formula that you can plug in all the numbers in and it'll spit out a yes or no. And a lot of this depends on what do you want to do with the money. What are your plans going forward? What's your opportunity costs? Do you want to talk a little bit about that, Justin?
Yeah, I'll mention this, that it's very likely you're going to sell your business if you list with us. So, the fact is that more than 90% of the businesses that are listed and sold with us sell in less than 2 months. And that's from the minute they're submitted to the minute the seller's paid. So, it's very likely they'll sell within 2 months. So if you're going to list with us, know that the value that you're getting today is likely what you're going to sell for. If you want to wait, you're probably going to have to wait a good 6 to 12 months to implement those changes and then see the profit change and then be able to use that in your multiple, like be able to use that as your monthly net profit that affects your valuation. So it's not like you can make a change tomorrow and then expect to get that in the valuation. So if I make a change tomorrow, that's likely, let's say, to get $10,000 additional dollars a month, and then I want to sell it tomorrow. Look, I made this change, it's going to happen. No, that's selling on potential. We're actually looking at trailing 12 months. So it doesn't matter what it's going to do in the future. That's great for the new buyer, but that gives you no benefit. You're not going to get the benefit of that. So you need to wait 6, 9, 12 months so you actually get that profit in and then get the value out of it. Does that make sense?
Yep, and one of the things that we do is when we look at your business, we want to make sure, we want to be pretty confident that it's a business that we can sell. So that's why we have such a high sell-through percentage, and that's why they sell so quickly. So we won't take on a business if we don't think we can sell it. We can give you some advice on what to do to sell it later, a lot of the stuff that we covered in the presentation.
We'll talk about that a little in the vetting process. So let's talk about the documentation you're going to need to prepare to list and sell your business with us. We're going to need a detailed profit and loss with cost of goods showing the landed product costs. So we actually have an example of that that we give you when you're looking to submit your business. So you can get an example P&L. We're going to need access to your Amazon Seller Central account so we can verify earnings and page views. It's nice for you to tell us how much the business is earning. We actually have to verify that for our potential buyers as part of our vetting process.
It's really important to note that access to the Seller Central account is optional. So if you'd rather not give us access, what we can do is we can do a Skype screen share and confirm all the numbers that you've sent over are correct. So this speeds up the process and it makes your life a little bit easier. However, if you're not comfortable sharing access, it's not a requirement.
Yeah, you're going to have to walk us through it live with our vetting team. The other thing is answer to questions about opportunities, the work required, et cetera. Like, what have you done with the business? What do you think the opportunities are for a buyer? What kind of work required on a daily, weekly, monthly basis? And that just helps us write up the listing. It's mostly hands-off after we get all this information from you, but we need some information because you know your business better than anyone else, and we want to make sure we have that for you. If you're ready to submit, you can go to empireflippers.com/mark, and you'll have, we'll talk about more of the details that are needed there. So once you've prepared all the documents, the next thing is the vetting process. So if you submit your business, and there's a link at that URL I just mentioned, you can go and actually submit your business and you'll ask some questions, you can submit it with us. And once you submit, it'll take anywhere from 1 to 3 weeks to actually get you listed on our marketplace. The reason for this is we have a vetting process where we don't just allow anyone to sell. And what this does is it keeps the quality of our listings much higher than just anywhere else. So if we let anyone list, we'd have a lot of crappy businesses, and your business would be listed next to these crappy businesses, which lowers the expected value. Like if you're listed next to businesses that aren't legitimate, quite frankly, it's going to hurt. People are going to think your business isn't quite legitimate either, and they're going to go for lower multiples. So that's one of the reasons we do it. We verify financials, we verify traffic, we verify sellers, we verify the products they're selling. So we do a lot of this verification, which our buyers expect. And then we package all that information into a nice, easy-to-read listing page and a bit of information that we hand out to depositors and potential buyers. So with our marketplace, too, not everyone, they don't get to see your product from the moment they go to the listing page. We actually hide that information. So they have to pay a deposit. It's a refundable deposit. They have to pay a deposit, or there are hoops we put them through before they actually get that information. And the reason is we want to protect your niche. We don't want everyone having access to all that. And ultimately, that protects the buyer, because it's a 90% plus chance you're going to sell the business. It's the buyer that if there's like a dozen copycats, it's going to cause problems for them. So we're really ultimately protecting them. Depending on kind of like how large the business is, we also do a whole bunch of additional marketing to the business. So we'll set up a seller interview with you where we walk you through on audio, like kind of your story, your entrepreneurial story, how you built the business. We also do a lot of social media campaigns in terms of like retargeting to the marketplace overall and retargeting to specific listings. When the seller interview goes live, we remarket via email to people that have visited the page. There's a lot of stuff going on behind the scenes to get your business activity, to get it interest, and to get it sold ultimately. All right, Mike, why don't you talk a little bit about the negotiation process and how this works on the sales side?
Sure. So once your listing is past vetting and we've determined a price, we'll list it for sale on Empire Flippers. We're with you during the entire sales process, and we'll help you negotiate. Like Justin already mentioned, when someone is interested in your business, we ask them to place a refundable deposit. What this does is, honestly, it eliminates tire kickers. So you're not answering questions from 50 people that actually have no intention of buying your business. It weeds out some people, and it's mostly serious potential buyers left. We also have VIPs. Those are basically repeat buyers that we work with on an ongoing basis. Some of them buy a handful of businesses every single month. Some of them buy a business every few months. We'll collect a lot of the initial questions from the buyers, and we'll send those to you to answer. If we know how to answer the questions ourselves, we'll answer the questions. This way you're not hearing the same questions over and over again. Once we've done the initial steps and have a buyer that wants to move forward to the next steps, we set up a buyer-seller conference call.
This, I think, Mike, is really important. And so here's what I love about the buyer-seller call. So if you're selling your business and we set up this buyer-seller call, everyone has to agree on kind of the time and make sure that's going to work for all parties, because this is kind of a worldwide business we're doing in terms of buyers and sellers. We set up a time, and so this is something we handle for you. So we're going to have a salesperson get in contact with you before the actual buyer-seller call and give you feedback on exactly who the buyer looks like, what their interests are, what their motivations are, and what they're looking for, and kind of like how to react on the call. So that's pretty cool. The other thing is our salespeople will guide you. They have a particular flow, and they'll guide you through the entire call. And we know, because we've done thousands and thousands of these calls, we've sold hundreds of businesses. So we know how to sell an online business. And so having us run that for you when, this may be your first sale, it may be only a couple of sales you'll ever do in your life. When we do this all the time, so it's great to kind of like, let us be in the driver's seat, even though we need you there for some additional questions. But even after the call, so let's say that you get an offer, or, they say, let me think about it and I'll get back to you. After the call, the salesperson will do an after-action report with you and actually go through, here's where I think went well, here's I think what we should expect next, here's what I think about the offer they made, or kind of like what we should expect. So you get kind of a feedback and breakdown on how the buyer-seller call. So it's a pretty involved, like, 3-step process for each of these calls, and it really helps you to be a better seller, helps us to maximize the value of the deal, and to keep you informed on what's going on in the process.
Yeah, and we'll coach you throughout the entire process. If you get an offer, we can give you advice on whether you should accept it or not. We can give you some comparable sales that we've done recently. We can give you feedback on how much interest there is currently in your office, or we're with you every step of the way there. Do you want to talk about the non-exclusive due diligence, Justin?
Yes. So what this means is, with non-exclusive due diligence, it means that your business is up for grabs. So it's not like once someone expresses interest in potentially buying your business, they don't have like a 90-day exclusivity period. So we're not locked in with one potential buyer, which is what letter of intent or letter of interest might do. It might lock us in for 90 days where we can't actually list and sell to other people during that time frame. LOIs generally extend out the process and make it take a lot longer, whereas we don't have that. So if you've got 2 or 3 parties that are interested in the business, and one person says, look, I can wire the money soon, it's based on from which buyer we receive the wire first. So the first person to wire the money gets the deal. So our buyers, our customers, are trained, and they know that they have to move quickly. So it really speeds up the process in terms of getting deals done, and lets them know if they don't move it, they're going to lose it, right? So I think that's helpful, both to get the deals done quickly, but to also, for our buyers to know that they have to move on deals. So let's talk about actually getting the deal done. So after we've gone through negotiations, let's say you've agreed, the buyers agreed to a deal. We do have contracts and legal agreements, especially for larger businesses. If it's like a smaller, let's say a $50,000, $80,000 sale, sometimes we do it without contracts, so we'll simply do it via email to make sure everyone's in agreement. But for an $800,000 FBA sale, we'll have contracts and legal agreements in place. We help with all that. We have a legal team that helps, so we're going to step in and help you get those contracts and agreements in place. One of the things we do is we transfer the seller's account. That's one of the ways to do it, and generally the preferable way is to transfer the seller account to the buyer. But we have a process, and I won't get into the details here, but we have a process for transferring the listing page control to the new buyer, basically getting them the listing page and having them take over the business. So it doesn't have to be, you don't have to sell your seller account. That's ideal, but a lot of times you might have other businesses in there that you don't want to transfer the seller account, and that's fine. We can do it another way as well. This process of transferring an FBA business takes a little bit longer. So like a Amazon affiliate site or an AdSense site may only take a week, week and a half. This can take anywhere from 1 to 5 weeks. It can take a little bit longer, and that means it's going to take a little bit longer to pay you out. If it's the process is a little bit slower and takes 3 or 4 weeks, it's going to take a little bit longer to get you paid, because we need to verify that the entire business has been transferred, and the buyer needs to verify that with us as well. In terms of paying you out, we can pay you out with a wire. So we can wire your bank account, whether it's onshore or offshore bank account. We can actually pay out via Bitcoin, which some people were surprised to hear, but I think it's kind of a nice, neat little addition and it's great. There's a whole bunch of, if you don't know the benefits of Bitcoin, you can look that up. One thing I'll mention is that we can pay out wires almost anywhere. And I don't know, I might as well say it. I'm sure I'm on a list already, but we had a seller in Pakistan, and legitimate seller, nice site, and a guy sold the site with us, and we were looking to pay him out, and we went to go transfer the money. The seller was like, I didn't get the money. We're like, well, that's really weird. What happened? And it was like the Office of Foreign Income Control, the asset control, that like put a hold on the money. So it's like, the anti-money laundering terrorist organization or federal group that stepped in to like keep this money from going to potential terrorists. And we were like, oh my God. So we eventually got it fixed, but this poor guy, poor seller, was just trying to sell his like online business. He's a hustling entrepreneur. That took him 2 or 3 weeks to get paid. We did make sure that happened though, so eventually he did get paid. We had another one, a funny one, in where the seller was based out of Nigeria, and so it's like a mid 5-figure business, let's say $40,000-$50,000 or whatever. And Joe, my business partner, got on the phone with Citibank and said, "Look, I need to wire $40,000 to Nigeria." And the bank was like, "Are you sure you want to do that?" And he's like, "No, no, no. Look, I owe the money. Yes, I'm sure."
Hey, he really is a prince.
Yeah, they're like, is there a prince involved in this? So I was like, no, listen, like, we're holding their money. Like, I owe them money. It's there. I have to send it to them. Like, I'm a jerk if I don't send it. You have to let me send it. Finally got the money through. But, yeah, if we can pay out Nigeria, I'm sure we can pay you out as well. So those are our funny payout stories. Seller ultimately is responsible for reporting their tax. That's not something we do for you. That's really on you. So I'll leave that there. You need to talk to, if you have any tax questions, you can talk to your accountant or figure that out on your own. All right, so that is basically the end of our presentation. If you want the slides for this, you can go to empireflippers.com/mark and get the slides. There's also the valuation tool, so you can click through and fill out the information to get a valuation on your business. It asks for, I think, the URL. Doesn't matter what URL you put in there. You can put in empireflippers.com or whatever, because you don't have a URL for your FBA business, but put a URL in anyway. It's required to fill the information out. And then if you actually want to list your business with us, there's a link to do that. And I'm pretty sure, Mark, that we have everyone that's on this webinar that's listening to this is going to get a free listing. So if they go to empireflippers.com/mark, click the button, they'll be able to go there and list their business for free. It's normally a $297 fee. We charge for a listing fee. They won't have to do that here. So just as a thank you to your audience.
However, just to be clear, there will still be commission once the sale is successfully completed, and their commission is 15%.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's not free. It's no listing fee. Yeah, but you don't have to pay the $300 to list.
Let me just jump in and kind of add it, because sometimes when people hear certain percentages that they don't really know what standards and different things are. We all know that real estate is 6%. But from somebody who has done this multiple times over the years, I've bought or I've sold 6 different businesses with brokers and so forth in similar settings. The amount of work here that goes in is significantly more than the 6% somebody goes in and sells a house. So this is a very select skill. And the fact of what they're talking about, they're marketing through social media. They have a pool of buyers ready that they're screening and doing things. And all of these things behind the scenes to make the communication between the buyer and seller go smooth. That's part of what all it is. And in reality, when you're doing all these things, you're probably going to get a higher sales cost because your business is better prepared to sell and you're going to get it back anyway. So nobody likes paying fees, but in reality, that's a very reasonable amount for what's involved here. And basically think of it as a way to put you in a position to walk away with several $100,000 to maybe several $1 million in doing that. So I'm all for one for paying people when they help me get to where I want to go. So I, for one, think that's a very reasonable number.
Yeah, Mark, that's a good point. And there are some places like there's an auction place called Flippa where you can actually, it's kind of more of a do-it-yourself model, and even there you're going to pay 10%, even on the do-it-yourself thing, and they're not going to do buyer-seller calls. They're not going to screen out anyone. And one of the problems is generally you'll get a lower multiple. So yes, you pay a little bit less in fees, but you get a much lower multiple because you're sitting next to businesses that aren't as quality. One of the things I think we provide, and we provide it for our buyers, but it benefits the sellers, is a vetted marketplace. So we actually go through and verify the earnings, we verify the traffic, we verify the sellers and the products of every business that we're selling to make sure they're legitimate. So while you may wonder on the seller side, how does that benefit you? Well, it benefits you by being next to other businesses that are legit and being across the board a higher quality marketplace, which allows us to charge more and basically have higher multiples on all the sales that we do.
Well, it's the old adage, it's the company you keep type of thing, but we've all preached in the Amazon business of trying to have a premium brand versus lower level race to the bottom with a price brand. And this is, you get what you pay for is the perfect cliche, I guess. And like I said, whether you guys realize or not, I looked around a lot because this is an area that I knew was coming. And I think for what you guys are doing and pricing and everything else, this is where I want to be. So again, there are other options out there. Again, Flip is a fine thing. You can list things, lots of things for a couple $100 somewhere. But again, sometimes you don't pay enough for things to get what you want. And that's just
for businesses,
too much. Or not enough.
For businesses that don't qualify or just aren't large enough or don't have enough history where they really need to sell it, we actually send them to Flippa. So sites that don't meet our qualification standards is a great place to go, or they're just too small. I think Flippa's fine as a DIY option. But if you have a legitimate business that has good cash flow that you want to sell for a premium, I think we're the better option.
You're probably not getting that whatever that was, $1.2 million at Flippa.
yeah, for sure.
So,
do any of the attendees have any questions we can answer?
Yeah, I got some questions here, and folks, if you want to start typing in some questions, I think a few people kind of jumped the gun, so let me try and get to those, but we'll hang around. I don't want this to go forever this evening, so if for whatever reason we don't get to your question, please don't take it personally. If it's a question that's already been asked, I'll skip over it, but if you have a question that we don't get to, go ahead and feel free to email me, which is info@markscottadams.com, and within a reasonable time, I will do my very, very best to try and get back to you. And if I can't get back to you, I'll forward the question to the guys here at Empire, and they'll get back to you. So let's just go ahead and take a few of these and see what we get. Here's a question here. It says, if you have 500 SKUs, will that hurt your multiple? Is that too many SKUs? If your monthly gross sales are around 50 to 60,000.
Yeah, it can be too much. It really kind of depends on the business. So, I mean, if those are all different color and size SKUs, that's not going to be that big of a deal. If you have a ton of SKUs and a ton of different types of products, you may want to look at that overall. Like, do you have a bunch of SKUs that don't sell often, that aren't really a major driver for your business? Maybe that's not really required. What are your thoughts, Mike?
Yeah, and I would pretty much echo the same thought there. If you look at your 500 SKUs, you might find, and you look at it by net profit, not just by sales, you might find that 50 of those SKUs they're producing 90% of the net profit. So if that's the case, whether you're selling or not, I would look closely at that.
Double down on that. Make sure, because you might have money, like inventory, locked up in other products that aren't moving as quickly, and so like getting rid of those SKUs over time and really focusing on the ones that are valuable and like really kind of adding more inventory there, growing your business in that 10% of the areas that are doing 90% of sales might be beneficial to your business overall.
And then one other thing I would recommend, if there's no way for you to to pare down the SKUs, and you need all 500 SKUs and you're looking to sell, one thing I would recommend is start working with a sourcing agent, because that will minimize the work required and it'll make the sale easier.
Yeah, basically it sounds like anything you're saying you can do that eliminates work for the owner/buyer, obviously business is more valuable. That's just a
Yeah, it limits work for you too. Even if you don't sell your business, limiting the work that you're doing isn't bad either, right?
Right. Here's one here that says, I know this valuation applies for FBA businesses. However, I can't help but think it also applies for my Shopify business too, which is not too shabby. And that's something we didn't touch on, but when you're talking about diversifying your business, I mean, if you have other outlets, whether it be Shopify stores or Jet or wherever you're selling, that's I agree with you. I think it's going to make it even maybe a higher multiple towards that higher end.
Yes. Yeah, so it's definitely helpful. If you've got, let's say, I don't know, I'll address both. So the first one I mentioned is if you have another business that's completely separate, that's not attached to FBA, and let's say it's a AdSense type business or an Amazon affiliate type business that's not attached to your FBA business at all, yes, I mean, the multiple is very similar. The process is very similar. I mean, the way you run it is different, obviously, and some of the details here are different. But we do valuations, and we buy and sell all different types of online businesses, whether it's info products or whatever. Now, if you're talking about whether they're attached, Mark, so like let's say you have a Shopify store that sells products that you also use FBA for to sell, and it's like you want to sell the business as an entity that has an e-commerce presence where you've got a third-party fulfillment service and everything. Yes, that's fantastic if you've got a significant amount of sales. If it's only like 2% or 5% of your total sales are through the e-commerce business and 95% through FBA, well, I mean, it's okay. It's kind of nice, but it's not really a huge value add. And if that's the case, you have to ask yourself the question, is it worth spending a lot of time, effort, and energy getting my Shopify store more traffic and business, or would those efforts be better spent on just doubling down on my FBA business? And that's a tough one because, yes, it would help your multiple to be diversified, but what would help your business more is if you doubled your profit on Amazon FBA in the next 12 months. And that's a question you have to answer. But yes, if you've already got the e-commerce piece going and you've got maybe, let's say, 70% of your sales are via FBA and 30% are via your Shopify e-commerce store, that's fantastic, and it definitely improves your multiple.
And that's that scenario where you're talking about, say, maybe where you're talking about doing 200 and you're the person that can take it to the next level because you've got outside marketing skills.
Yeah, that's for sure.
Because you already got the foundation built.
Yeah, someone looks at it and they go, oh, they got 70% of their sales with FBA. They've got only 30% of their sales with their e-commerce. But the reason for that is they're number 9 for their main keyword on the first page. I can get them up to number 3, number 2 with my SEO skills and significantly improve that business. So, yeah, this is the best they can do, but I can crush it with my SEO skills on their Shopify site, things like that.
Right. Yeah, because I'm just a firm believer. I mean, that's part of where things are going. And, with the review changes and things that hit, I think we all lost reviews and made a lot of us mad. I know it made me mad because a lot of work, like everybody, went down the tubes a little bit. And I'm actually starting some things from scratch and trying some things now where I'm looking at it as launching just a new account, new brand with the intent of doing things as e-commerce and kind of having it be a 50-50 split. So I won't be cut off at the knees if something changes in the future. And
Mike, what do you think about the review change in terms of like buying and selling FBA businesses? What does that do?
Well, I don't think it makes... Go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, so I would say the silver lining to the most recent review change and kind of the changes Amazon has been making lately, and I'd expect they'll continue making next year, is it makes it harder for new people to get started in FBA. What that does from a sales perspective of selling your business is over time it'll push up the multiples, so it'll make FBA businesses more valuable because it increases barriers to entry.
To a certain extent, I think there's merit there, but I still think you maybe have to look at things that some strategies. I'm always testing things and trying to be a little bit ahead of the curve just so I can come back and teach it. But one of the things now is instead of trying to find that $20,000 an item or a month item, it's pretty easy to find a particular category of products. So maybe I've always taught, let's do $1,000 a month product to get started, learn what you're doing, and then scale up if you choose. But I think now there's still literally millions of products and keywords that you can get started, and maybe with 6 reviews, you can do $500 to $1,000 a month. And there's no barrier to entry at that level. And maybe you wouldn't get to that 500 or 600 SKUs we're talking about, but if you had even 50 SKUs and you're making 25 to 50 grand a month, that's still a very, very viable, worthy business, So you don't have to concentrate so much on getting reviews because they were so easy before. But change is inevitable, and I always figure something we'll figure out, and whether that forces us all to look a little bit more at e-commerce. Maybe I think that's part of it too. Again, maybe it's a blessing in the long run because it does force you to diversify other than being so dependent on one source.
So some people ask us, or potential sellers ask us, like, how do my margins compare to other people? And the general rule is about 33%. So you might have around a 30% margin in terms of your net profit. So if you're doing $30,000 a month in total sales, it may cost $10,000 for your cost of goods and shipping. Amazon may be taking, and fees and everything, maybe another $10,000, and you're making $10,000 in profit. So if you're around there, if you're doing better than that, it's great. It means your margins are better than average. If you're a little lower than that, that's okay. If you get down below 10% in terms of your profit, that's pretty low, and I'd look at seeing what you can do to improve, maybe changing products or increasing your price or whatever you can do.
Yeah, there's a lot of ways to look at things, and different people have different goals. So I always hesitate to say in absolutes, because maybe somebody's happy making a 28% net profit. I worked for years in a clothing store where I was happy making 10, and I had to be there every day.
So, yeah. Doesn't matter to me. I'm happy if you're making 10% margin and you're making 50,000 on the profit. Who cares, right? You're crushing it. But buyers may look at that in terms of like, why are the margins low if it dropped anymore, just from a buyer's perspective. In terms of like you running your business and what you should be at, I'm not sure there is a you should be at this. I'm not sure it actually matters, but it does matter from a buyer's perspective of what they're expecting or looking for,
Yeah, I mean, I realize some people aren't getting out of bed for 10 grand a month, and some people are, that changes their life. So
weird, right?
Everything's relative.
It's all relative.
The old saying goes, Get back a couple of questions here. Brady, that's funny. Mike, I think we answered that earlier. I think it's 15% for what they're doing. And just to list it there, because of you're part of the community here, they're going to waive that for you, which is very generous and appreciative. Kirk has a question. He says, will this be recorded? Yes, short of technical difficulties. And a couple here where people have had to go and they're thanking us and whatever else. But folks, I mean, that's, if you got any questions, please type them in, because we'll say a couple more and be able to take, one or two more. But guys, I just want to say in the end, from somebody who has, sometimes people ask me what I do, and I say, well, I kind of start and flip businesses like people flip houses like you see on TV, except it's just a little more elaborate, a little more complex. And, I'm in my 7th business, and every time I sell a business and get paid on that, you sign the deal or whatever, I actually got a deal signing pen I break out for business sales days. And
that's awesome.
It's a good day, man, when you get paid that large sum of money. You take the bank or the check to the bank, the teller looks at you, and they don't really quite just, I always smile and say, hey, man, I want a game show.
Yeah. Do you ever, I mean, even now, right, you get nervous toward the end, because like this is beyond just like, normally it's a lot of money, but it's also an emotional process. When you're selling your business, definitely the first time, but even later, there's an emotional process to it where you feel relieved and excited when you sell. Even after you sell, you might feel a little.
For those of us who are self-employed, our businesses are our children to a certain, I know that sounds not really, but you're
selling our children. No, I get it. Yeah.
And, I've had a business that didn't work out, and I sat down and cried like a baby. But at the same time, the ones when you sell, I mean, every business I've started now, or I do and have done for the last 10, 15 years, whatever it's been, has been, I started it when I get to this point, I'm selling. And I get excited about the sale, because that means I accomplish my goals, because it's just the feeling of accomplishment, and success is just financial, it's personal, it's emotional, it's a whatever else. And much like being able to launch an Amazon brand, you know how to rinse, wash, and repeat that. Once you sell a business, man, you laugh literally all the way to the bank. And when you drive back and have a nice dinner that evening, you start and you take maybe you travel the world and whatever else, but then you come back and say, man, I know how to do this. And I'm going to do it twice as fast the next time.
Yeah, we've had some sellers that sell their business and they're happy, they get their payout in 200,000, 300,000, whatever it is, and they're excited about it and they're happy. But then later on, they're like, oh, I wonder if I should have sold my business. Maybe I shouldn't have. And sometimes they look and they see how the business is doing like 6 months or a year later, and they see it's like improved, sometimes dramatically, and they get that kind of like feeling like, oh, maybe I shouldn't have sold. Have you ever felt or like had that kind of like?
I never had buyer's remorse, because I was emotionally attached to my first business, but then the rest of them were proverbial widgets that I was using to create a business to eventually sell.
Yeah.
So, I truly like and enjoy what I'm doing now. I enjoy the personal parts of it. And I guess I can't sell the training and things I'm doing because it's all under my name, but I am an full-time Amazon seller. And to me, those products are widgets. Most people, it seems, a lot of people I've coached that they get excited about their product and they try and cram it into the market to where they are emotionally attached. It's a hobby. It's an interest. Man, I look at things and try and find keywords and then go find products to put them in. And I don't care about the products. I mean, I want it to be a good product and all that stuff, but I'm not emotionally attached like I was in my 20s.
Yeah. The widget, it's not a big deal.
Yeah. I mean, I want it to be strictly in terms of ROI and all that type of thing. But man, there's no better day when you sell a business. And for all of you who are listening, and I wanted to have these folks on because you got to think about things like this, and you got to literally see the bigger picture at the end. And when those days get hard, or a supplier loses a shipment or Amazon does something or what, you got to know why you're doing it. And you got to be able to see the proverbial pot of gold at the end of the rainbow, because unlike so many other people who just sell time for money, at the end of it, man, they're even. There is no asset value at the end. And that's one of the things I truly liked about a business. I mean, I always made more money that last day than I ever did the time building up and, whatever else. And it was hard, man. It was hard work. But we live in a world now where you can do everything digital that I used to have to do physically. And, it's, I don't know, I can go on and on because these are the type of stuff I get excited about. But for those of you who can eventually sell a business, and I'm sure down the road somewhere, a year or two, whatever, I'll get some emails and say, man, I did this and sold some business, and thank you guys. Man, I'm just going to tell you, welcome to the club when that happens, because I can't think of a much better professional feeling. So, yeah, I don't know. Mark, I could go on and on, but,
All right. Well, thank you so much, Mark, for having us on. I really appreciate it, and I hope this is valuable. If anyone wants to reach out to me, they can do it at Empire Flippers on Twitter. I'm always there. They can shoot us an email, info@empireflippers.com, and ask any questions they want. We'd be happy to.
Justin, we got one more question. Let's take this, and then we'll shut it down. It says, I just launched my first product. What mistakes have you seen other people make that has made it difficult to sell down the road, and what should they avoid?
I'll mention one. Maybe Mike can get one too. The first one is, and this is just common, when people run out of inventory, right? So, FBA is a very cash-heavy business. You're constantly having to dump cash into inventory, and so you're scared to get that inventory because you're not sure. You want to make sure you're going to sell out, and you're nervous about it, so you don't order, and then you run out of inventory, and then that 6 months, 8 months down the road, if they ran out of inventory twice, they have to explain that, and it may cost them a little bit. Maybe a buyer wants a discount, so we could lose them a bit of cash on the multiple or on the single other business if they have to discount it a bit. And it's a really bad thing to do. You should beg, borrow, or steal. Maybe not the steal part. You should beg or borrow to make sure that you don't run out of inventory. It's really important as you grow your FBA business. So have credit, use cash, borrow money, whatever you have to do, but make sure you keep your inventory going. On a growing business, that's super important.
All right. Mike, you want to jump in?
Yeah, that was really good advice. I would say I wouldn't be too worried about things because most of the things that we talked about, you can go back and fix them. Like, let's say you haven't kept good financial records in the first couple of months. As long as you have a separate bank account, as long as you still have all the records, you can go back and organize them. I would really recommend, if you can, try to set it up separately from any of your other businesses. Get that business bank account open as soon as possible, and then just focus on growing and building the business in the beginning.
For those of you who are here and part of the Head Start community, if you go back and watch the webinar or not the webinar, but the module on selling your business, I got a bunch of things like this listed, and that may be something that would help you, Kirk, in being able to do that and just being able to see, because I think I've got a listing in there on some of the slides. But because, again, I've been through this so many times, and I guess that's why I'm so passionate about it, because, again, I know this is the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. But anyway, guys, I know it's different time zones. We're trying to coordinate things from around the world here, and I really, really appreciate you, all three of you, taking the time to be here. And I appreciate you making the offer to have people list without having to pay the fee. That's very nice and kind of you. And also, too, for those of you who are interested, make sure you check out their site under the .com/Mark, and they got a valuation tool in there that you can download and play with and keep in touch with what your business is worth month to month. So whenever you're ready, whether to buy or sell, give these guys a call. So with that, guys, I truly appreciate you here. Anything else you want to add before we go?
Awesome, Mark. No, I just really appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you for everyone attending this webinar. Really appreciate it. If you want to hear more about what we talk about in terms of buying and selling, we have a podcast, Empire Flippers Podcast. We also talk about kind of the living and working remotely or working overseas. So if you're interested in that, you can hear us talk about it on the show.
All right.
Thanks a lot, Mark. I know I've been quiet the whole time here, but I am active and I was listening. So appreciate your audience tuning in, and hopefully I'll be talking to some sellers soon.
Great. Thanks, Joe. All right. Well, thanks, Mike. Thanks, Kirk. Thanks, Harry. Thanks all of you guys for appreciating the thank you stuff here, and glad and appreciate always all of you being here and being part of the community. So hopefully this will help somebody and help certainly most of you going forward. So with that said, guys, thank you all so much. So see everybody next time. Same bat time, same bat channel. Thanks.